Hello and welcome to Almost Got It. Today on Almost Got It, we're going to cover such topics as the release of Manus AI, an agent that allows you to deploy other AIs. We're going to talk about the point where we become gods, the latest discovery of BRP, a new peptide that could help with weight loss, and many other things. And as always, our focus here is to discuss all of these topics under the umbrella of what is the impact to consciousness, to transhuman topics, to singularity, AI, spirituality, and more. And you have with you today Dylan Dane, who's a computer scientist, entrepreneur, ex-MIT, ex-YC, burner from and a Sri Lankan. And you also have myself, if you want to introduce me, Dylan.
I'm just amused that you mention that I'm Sri Lankan every time.
I love that. It's my favorite thing about you.
And Ben, who's also a computer scientist, who's built multiple companies and has been the CEO of the famed Estrogen Institute in Big Sur, and currently an executive coach doing some cutting edge stuff in psychology and behavioral health and stuff like that. And also make sure to subscribe to the episode and the podcast, and leave comments and all that stuff. And let's get into the docket for today.
All right, so we got a couple of ones to kick things off today. So one is, I think we were talking a couple of weeks ago about how Meta has this new technology to turn your thoughts into words, and I think it's going to be quite the moment when it starts accidentally syncing with your Twitter account. You start posting all your thoughts, little gems like, "Do penguins have knees? Why can't I tickle myself? Did I remember to wipe?"
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot worse, man.
I know.
You think you're gonna get away with do penguins have knees?
I know the level of honesty, but then it goes both ways, right? Because now with Elon's Neuralink and getting a chip in your brain, it'll be things like you have a thought, right? And then it just pops up with an ad, and it'll go, "Well, hey, we noticed that you were thinking about death.
Yeah.
How about some life insurance?"
Someone's going to build Thought Twitter. It's someone will build it, so we'll find out.
Right. It's going to be like Justin.TV back in the day, right? Just sharing his life. There'll be like a stream of consciousness, but it'll actually be a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Literally. That'd actually be a good name, right? Stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
All right. So kick us off here, Dylan. We're going to talk about Manus.ai.
Yes. So today we have a very exciting start to the pod. We have perhaps one of the first reviews of Manus.ai. I've had access to this for a little over 24 hours now, and it's been a very exciting thing to dig into.
Yeah.
So
why don't you start with telling us what it is?
Yes. Manus.ai they call it the first general purpose AI agent, meaning multiple AI models working together in tandem to deliver end-to-end product experiences where this thing can build a product that you can deploy on the web and use right away. And the remarkable thing is that this might be the most useful product in AI I've ever tried, in the sense that it outputs things that you can actually use in the real world, which is pretty impressive. And also, this comes from China. Just like DeepSeek, that the frontier model that came out of China a few weeks ago, this is another breakthrough that's coming out of China for the first time. There, someone has built a product that can output this quality, useful products from China. That's very interesting as well.
Yeah. So let's break this down. So the idea here is that instead of you're just sort of asking questions or building a prompt in AI and it's generating results, and then you take those results and bring them into real life. What's different here for the lay user?
Yeah, so great question, Ben. So with an LLM, ChatGPT, you ask a question and the LLM would answer, right? That's great. And then the layer on top is this idea called agents, where you ask the LLM a question, and then the LLM is able to go out there, surf the web, do research, and find information and from multiple sources and synthesize it, stitch it together, and present you with a much more complete answer. And this has been available today in various forms as well, through ChatGPT and a number of other LLM products. And then if you take that idea a step further, then what you get is, can these different LLM instances not just go out there and surf the web and find information, but if you're asking for something that doesn't exist, say you ask for, I want to track the stock price of a certain company and do some kind of analysis on top of that, the LLM can write code and build a product to generate that output for you, and the LLM does this by interacting with a number of agents. It's just like having a team of developers doing a bunch of work for you, but in this case, each developer is an instance of a large language model.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I would think about this, right, is that and Andreessen famously said that like software would eat the world.
Yeah.
And someone made this analogy some years ago. They showed a desk of someone in the early 90s, all the different things on the desk. There was a calendar, there was a notebook, there was a phone, all these different devices. There was a computer, and one by one, each one of those devices or technologies was moved into the computer, right?
Yeah.
So all those things moved into the computer. But then, even though that had happened, if you zoomed out and you looked not just at the desk, you looked at the whole office space, you still had a team of people. And while all of the items on their desk had been moved into the computer, the team was actually there. And we're at the point right now where many of those people are being moved into the computer. I
Yeah.
mean, what you just described is the literal end of outsourcing admins and things like that. Many of the tasks that I would have given to my admin 2 weeks ago are
Yes.
being replaced today, right?
Yeah.
So I was using ChatGPT 4.5 with deep research mode
Yeah.
to build a whole travel itinerary,
Mm-hmm.
something that I would have had my admin do, right?
Yes.
And now this is available to every person all over the world at the fraction of a price
Yes.
of an admin. And this next layer that's already happening is someone to manage essentially the admins or the developers or things like that, right? I mean, I had the AI build me a contract last night. It functioned exactly like a very skilled lawyer in the state of California. I had it build a website in real time that actually did all of this math and helped me calculate a bunch of stuff that would have taken me hours to build on my own. So
Right.
we're literally here, and this layer with Manus AI of going out, and it works across different LLMs, right? It uses Anthropic, it uses ChatGPT. We're moving up this layer of abstraction. It's a sign of things to come, and this is only going to accelerate, right? Like, for example, Dario Amati, the CEO of Anthropic, predicts that 90% of coding will be done by AIs within a year, which signals the replacement of many developers now. So
Yeah.
it's an unbelievable shift.
It is. It is. It is. It is quite unbelievable. And Manus does use Claude and Claude 3.5 and Alibaba's Qwen LLM in the backend. But to those use cases, I want to talk about some of the experiences that I had with Manus. It was quite the anus clenching experience, Ben, to use Manus.
Did you spend all night writing that? I feel like I see you sitting in your bathtub, like going, "Wish."
Truly, it's a thing these days, right? Like every 2 weeks or so, you just see something. It's like, holy shit, your mind is blown and your anus is clenched, and the next thing is also named Menace and rhymes with anus. So anyway,
yes.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, so to me, I think it would be helpful. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I want to ask you about System 2, your company, because it is an AI driven company. It's doing a lot of the things in a particular domain that Manus does. Would you give me the spiel, like the 30-second spiel on what it is that System 2 does?
System 2, what we do is, our mission is to bring wellness coaching to 1 billion people worldwide. And I'm a deep believer in wellness, physical and mental and spiritual wellness. And a lot of the time,
that's why you're built like a Greek god. That's business priorities.
Exactly, it's work. I have to do it. And so coaching is a luxury that most people don't have access to today, and we want to make it accessible to a lot more people so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve with their bodies, right? And we do this by partnering with influencers and then empowering them using a tech stack, including humans and AI. So we do use AI in the back end quite a bit. But yeah, so that's what we do at System 2.
Right. And so my question, because when I looked at Manus and what's happening here, I began to wonder, like, is this an existential threat to System 2? Right. I mean, if you look at the progression here, it's going from, hey, there's this agent that can do a little research for you. And I'm like, oh, great. Like that would replace my intern. Mm-hmm. Right. And now it's like, oh, now we can go manage not just your team of interns, but we can literally write code, and we're starting to replace your developers. Could something like this, can you see a progression where suddenly this influencer goes, do I use System 2 or do I just hire Manus? And System 2, I think it would be helpful to talk about some of the practical things that it does, right? I'm an influencer. You give me a phone app, a website, an Apple Watch, an Android Watch integration, and now I can sell customized coaching, fitness coaching right now to my audience. I mean, at what point does one of these influencers just go, oh, well, I'll just hire, just sign up for Manus and say, build me a phone app and website?
Absolutely. This is you're making a really good asking a really good question, and at the extreme, something like Manus or agentic workflows that can build complex software is an existential threat for pretty much every SaaS company, right? And particularly in SaaS, people have had these crazy 70 plus 90% margins in some cases, and you're just selling a piece of software, and that past is done, right? I would be shocked if there are SaaS companies out there making 90% margins 3 to 5 years from now, because that makes no sense. Because if your margin is my opportunity, right? And someone else will build the same product and sell it. Now, in the case of System 2, I'm not as worried because couple of things. One of our fundamental thesis is that the accountability component, the human interaction will be always be really valuable. So we rely on that, human human accountability a lot to deliver the coaching that we deliver. And then, of course, there's a lot of software that goes into it, but ultimately creating systems around that and improving that accountability experience and involving real coaches who are amazing at this is our core competency. So yes, we're not a pure SaaS business, and this was kind of by design. I actually believe that businesses that may not have been as attractive in the past because these businesses are operationally intensive, and they're not pure software ideas, will be all of a sudden become much more attractive in this future, because software is going to be cheap. Software is not going to be your moat, right? And so I think, and System 2 kind of falls in this category as well. There's a lot more operational stuff that goes into what we do, and that might be a more attractive model.
Yeah. I mean, that's one area that I would challenge you, right? It is, there is this theme, right? We just talked about it, of now software replaced all items on the desk. Now it's going to replace the people in the office. And so services industries that have previously been safe from software taking them over are no longer safe, right? The operations heavy stuff could be replaced. How do I know if I'm interacting with one of the System 2 influencers or the AI? How will I know? How will I care? Right? It seems like this could all be replaced anyway.
I mean, AI is such an event horizon. There's so much that we don't know, and I really don't think anyone knows. It is pretty crazy. But let me talk a little bit about like some of the experimentation I've done with Manus and why I really felt like it is one of the most useful, if not the most useful product I've seen in AI. And a lot of people will tell you that ChatGPT Deep Research is one of the most useful, if not the most useful product out there, because it gives you very usable output in the sense of a research report, about anything that you kind of want to research, and it does like a week's worth of research within a few minutes, right? Like the travel example that you talked about. And Manus is able to do that, and then some, by building end-to-end usable products. So you mentioned System 2. At System 2, we build websites for influencers, for one thing, to promote their business. And these websites are hosted on Webflow. It's a hosting platform that you design a website and upload it there, and like they host it. And this cost us a pretty decent amount of money for the hosting services. And one way to reduce that cost is to move that website from Webflow to a cheaper hosting provider once it's built. So I asked Manus this question, and I told Manus, hey Manus, we have this problem. Can you design a solution for us to host these websites elsewhere, right? And Manus went off and did 20 to 30 minutes of work, and you can kind of see the work happening, which is really cool. It's like thinking to itself, coming up with a plan and solving these problems by itself, talking to itself. And now 30 minutes later, it outputs an end-to-end product that I can install and run, that I could now use to export these Webflow websites from our stack and then push it to Cloudflare, which Manus identified as the best hosting provider, and then set up all this, like, it has a GUI, like a user interface that I can use on the web, and a command line interface, and all these features, right? Yeah. And this is essentially like instantly multiple, like tens of thousands of dollars saved per month for System 2 if I just deploy this like tomorrow, right? And it's like wild. It's like 20 minutes of work. Now I've not validated this product that Manus spit out yesterday end to end, so caveat that, but it's incredibly impressive the amount of like productive output that this thing can have in 20 minutes.
Right. So let me do my best here to translate this. I'm realizing that part of my function here is to be like a Dylan to human translator. So essentially, there's a service where you host these websites for each of your influencers called Webflow. Yeah. And I use that for my own websites. Yeah. And one of the things that Webflow did that was valuable, I guess, 2 hours ago and maybe no longer valuable today, it is that it had this very beautiful, very usable interface that made it easy to build websites and make adjustments and things like that for us humans. And it's worth paying a premium for you to host all of these websites on there because of the usability and all the thought that they've put into it.
Right. And it's a great design interface. And then they have great margins on the hosting side, because once you design on Webflow, you just keep it there as opposed to moving it elsewhere previously.
You're stuck there because the Webflow interface is one way that you use it, and then it translates it into HTML and other fancy shit to be displayed in the browser or on someone's phone. And that just within 30 minutes, Manus, in theory, made that irrelevant. That you could just take everything from there, output it, send it over to some bare bones place where you can host it for a fraction of the price. And so, and even if that was only, say, 90% of the way there, and you had to have your team go and correct the code and things like that, even if none of that code worked, they've built, Manus gave you a pathway to improve your business margins in a substantial way. And if you think about the compounding effect of you using Manus, not to just solve this one issue, but every aspect of your business, I mean, are you thinking differently about your hiring plan, for example, now that these things are coming?
I am, yes, and something that's been constantly top of mind. A lot of potentially junior developers that you would have hired previously are likely not going to be necessary in the future, and you're just like going to be getting a lot more output per developer. And man, I could give you another example, as I did this yesterday. Where, with influencers, another thing that we do is we track influencers online, their posts, their engagement rates, their activity level on Instagram, TikTok, etc., so that we can identify up and coming and popular influencers, and also help them by providing data on their posting and how their posts are doing, to improve their future performance of their posts, right? And I asked Manus to build a tool to track these influencers, and particularly analyze the specific posts using kind of some image analysis, and identify what type of posts are they making, and categorize these posts and all these things. Again, 20-30 minutes later, it output a product that basically can do what I asked it to do, which is incredible, because there are products out there that charge $1,000, $2,000 a month for doing this type of thing. And I mean, maybe what Manus built doesn't do all of the things that those products does today, but even if it goes halfway there, that's like, it's a huge value.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting around this, because and this is something to double click on, is that we're crossing this threshold in a huge way around ease of use.
Yeah.
Right. So there's sort of accuracy and precision on one side, and then speed and ease of use on the other when it comes to doing tasks and software. And right now, what I've noticed for myself is this behavior change where I know that sometimes AI gets things wrong, right? But if I think about, I can do 15, 20 minutes of research online and check different websites and verify that my thinking is accurate. Or I can do 30 seconds to a minute with AI and maybe have only a 90% accuracy rate instead of a 99%, and then just move so much faster. And what I find myself is leaning into that. So all these places where you get a 50% gain, but it happens within seconds or minutes versus thousands of dollars and these long time periods that, I mean, where an hour even feels long, much less a day or a week like these other services. I mean, the level of change here is so insane,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I can I get some predictions from you, Dylan? I want some predictions because we're in the Wild West here. The rate of
Is
acceleration is
yeah.
so insane. I don't
Yeah.
even know
So
what
I have the
coaching for.
most
Yeah, go ahead.
I have the most ironic story about Manus that I read. Okay, to the point that what you're talking about. So obviously, like, where Manus is so threatening to all these other software companies is because Manus can eventually build a product that replaces the software, whatever the company product that you buy, right? But then, of course, the first thing that happened was this guy. Actually, many people have done this, but at least one guy did this thing. He asked Manus to create a copy of itself, and and supposedly Manus did this, and this guy publishes it with the name Anus. Um, Acronym standing for Autonomous Networked Utility System. A complete agent framework with architecture, documentation, and tooling, 100% designed and coded by AI. My role, I wrote the prompt and used Cursor to push it to GitHub. That's all. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, Manus cloned itself apparently. But even aside from this, there are people working on creating open source clones of Manus, and yes, the power has been unleashed.
And this is to me the thing that's fascinating, right? Is at least from a business perspective, and then I want to get into what does this mean for humanity and
Yeah.
consciousness and all this stuff that is our sort of underwriting theme here. Is it's not at all clear to me which of these companies is going to still be around in 10 years,
Yeah,
right? I
very
mean,
true.
it's the early days of the internet, but with technology that's much more exponential.
Yeah.
And my first instinct is it is going to whoever wins here will actually be the person that owns the relationship with the customer,
Hmm.
right? Because everything behind it is going to be commoditized, right?
Yeah.
Manus just made a clone of itself. I mean, in theory, they could own the relationship with the customer, but someone else could own that. So where does it end, right? Because I'm sure they're all going to come up with systems that if OpenAI is trying to charge a ton of money and own the profits, some other company is going to come along with a competitor
Yeah.
with GPUs, and then someone will just say, write a competitor to OpenAI, right? And
Yeah.
then they do, and it'll become the low cost provider. So how does this end?
There's a fantastic book called Seven Powers that is maybe the best business strategy book ever written, maybe, that is used by a lot of Silicon Valley VCs to evaluate companies that they invest in as well. And the book lists a set of powers that a business can acquire to become dominant in a field, right? And one of those powers, of course, is network effects, like you're mentioning. And then there are a number of other powers that the book goes through, like counter positioning, as in like doing something an incumbent cannot do without damaging their own business, and scale economies and so on. I would love for the authors to rewrite the book with with taking into account how AI is changing the world, right? And I would not be surprised if some of those powers are to change dramatically or even vanish. I'd imagine things like brand and network effects will still be powerful in a fully AI saturated future, but then some other things might not be relevant at all. So yes, it is quite uncertain.
Well, how would so you mentioned that I mentioned network effects. I didn't tell me that. What are the network effects that you see?
Well, network effects, I mean, classic network effects are products like Facebook, where the definition of network effects is that each added user to the product makes the product valuable to every single person that is using the product already. Right. So the classic example is a social network where if a social network of 10 people, it's not that valuable. But then when a 10 more people join the network, it actually becomes more valuable to every single person that's already there because there are more people there, the more connections that you can make and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that
I
that
mean,
that
what
might
you're talking about Metcalfe's law, right?
yes,
The value
exactly.
of the network grows at the square of the number of nodes. And so
Exactly.
I think that's really interesting, right? Because right now, that isn't in play with AI, but it could be if we figured out how to get AIs to play together, right? I mean, right now, whether I can switch tomorrow from Anthropic to ChatGPT or to DeepSeek or whatever. Like there's no switching cost for
Hmm.
me right now.
Yeah, it's hard to yeah, there might be some kind of network effects that could be in play there, but yeah, it's not entirely sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've seen is this concept of memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? So our friends over at Rosebud, with
Yeah.
their AI journaling app, which I use every day now,
Mm-hmm.
it has a memory in it, and it can
Yeah.
see what my earlier entries
Yes.
were, and then bring those up and do
Yeah.
pattern matching over time. And so that's an example of
Yeah.
value being created. Now, that's not network effects.
So I would
How?
push back on that, Ben,
Yeah.
because one of the reasons that it was difficult for people to move off of products in the past, switching costs, right? So switching costs is, in fact, one of the powers that Seven Powers book talks about. And this is a power that might go away because of AI. And why I think that is because one of the reasons why it was difficult to switch out of a product was not because you couldn't export the data, because almost all products actually give you the option to export your data because it's your data, right? You wouldn't even join the product if they didn't give you that option. The reason why it was hard to switch was because once the data was in that product, even if you export it, you get that in some obscure format that you cannot process. And so it might as well be that you cannot access that data anymore, right? So, like, that data was gone if you leave that product. Now, in an AI future, you might just ask Rosebud to export that data in some CVS format or JSON format or whatever obscure format, and then just like dump it to like ChatGPT or Manus, and just like that thing will take care of parsing all that data, right? And
Right.
so what that means is that switching cost would go to zero for a very large number of products, at least where the moat is user data.
Well, there you go. So you we're hearing it right here first that user data is no longer a moat. Thank you, Dylan.
Potentially.
there,
um,
there we go. I sort of agree with that. I mean, I was listening to an interview with Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he was essentially saying the same thing, that SaaS would go away because a lot of these products are built around doing sense making and providing an interface into underlying data
yeah,
that is something that is usable by us humans. And he was saying, well, Excel is just one of those interfaces. And now with AI, you can just have it manage the underlying data and just build you a custom interface in the moment
yeah,
that is useful for you. And everyone sort of knows Excel now. Excel's sort of like the QWERTY keyboard,
yeah,
right? The QWERTY keyboard that we all use to type on is not the most efficient and fastest keyboard out there, but because we know it, it continues to dominate. And so
yeah,
his view is that the AI could generate any interface that you want,
yeah,
but it's going to stick with Excel
yeah,
because we've known that. So
yeah,
maybe that's a case that certain incumbents may continue to exist just because they already are dominant.
Yeah.
Which is sort of weird.
I want to touch upon a couple other Manus-related topics, Ben. One is the China angle, right? And now we saw that for the first time with DeepSeek, a frontier model coming out of China for a few weeks ago. And then now with Manus, China's having their second DeepSeek moment, where they have released a model that there's a specific benchmark called Gaia that measures the performance of an LLM in these complex multi-agent type workflows. And the previous crown was went to ChatGPT's deep research that we all know and love. And Manus seemed to beat ChatGPT deep research by 20 to 30% in this benchmark. And that's quite the leap. And again, coming out of a small startup in fact in Wuhan, quite famous province since Wuhan.
Yeah, their last AI release was COVID-19. Right?
Yes, labs in Wuhan seem to release fascinating things these days.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing is, why are the folks over at OpenAI not just simply asking Manus to clone itself and then deploying it on an OpenAI server? Right. So we're going to see this leapfrogging back and forth. I do think it's fascinating that we, as a nation, there is this very clear threat, right? We announced that TikTok was a threat, and so whoever owns the relationship with the customer could win this thing in a very real way, and we don't want that to be China.
There's the economic win, but then there's also kind of the geopolitical angle, right? And obviously China is not aligned with us from a, I don't know, like a governance, even morality point of view when it comes to things like democracy and individualism and individual rights. And the classical thinking has been China is behind us, and we can contain them through these various schemes like embargoes on GPUs and all kinds of stuff. But is that really working? I mean, they seem to have the best humanoid robots. They seem to have the best drone systems. And then in AI, right, like this is where the crown jewel, the US has been really the one country, the one nation that's pushed the frontier in AI, starting with all the work that OpenAI did, but then all this innovation is coming out of China, and so that is concerning.
Well, what's concerning about that? What is it? Just to be clear, what does that mean?
It's concerning from the point of view of many things. If you're an American, and if you want America to be the dominant country in the world economically and geopolitically, it's concerning because can America challenge China at the same level, right? And maintain its position. That's concerning, and it's also concerning from a security point of view and an AI safety point of view, which is a point that we should touch actually. And this is actually one of the most fascinating implications of something like Manus to me. So AI safety, for the listener, the idea is that will AI, as it becomes more and more intelligent, will remain safe, right? And so the classic sort of one of the postulates is that if anyone can ask an AI to do anything, right? For example, some crazy person might be like, hey, use the ingredients that are available in my kitchen to make a nuclear bomb, right? And will the AI do that? So
what exactly do you keep in your kitchen, Dylan?
I mean, in theory, right? So some people have pushed back against this, and I actually include myself in this bucket, where one of the reasons to be optimistic here is that for an AI to be able to execute on such a complex task as building a nuclear bomb from general household material, it needs to have a true world model, right? In the sense that it cannot be crippled. You can't just teach it like a, one specific technique around nuclear bombs. It just needs to understand the universe in its kind of full entirety to do something as complex. And people hypothesize, including myself, that to get to that level, you would also need to absorb all kinds of ideas around ethics and freedom and morality and all that stuff. And by the time that an AGI can build a nuclear bomb with household material, it would also understand ethics and such to the point where it would actually not want to do that, right? Um, because it would just like have essentially a sort of consciousness in itself, that a sense of right and wrong, that it would refuse to execute the task of building a nuclear bomb. Now, something like Manus, however, provides a little bit of a counterpoint to that, right? Because here we have an AI that can build an end-to-end complete product that you can deploy and you can use on day one, and it doesn't seem to have that much of a sense of right and wrong or consciousness. Now, maybe it does. So that is concerning, from an AI safety point of view.
Well, there's a couple things about this. I mean, one is it's not that hard to take things that have a positive intention and then adjust them to things that could have a nefarious intention, right? And so if you for example, if you have people working in silos, each group may not know what they're working on, and together they're developing some sort of new gun technology, or something like that. So you could silo different AIs to do something like that, right? It's like, oh well, we're producing a nuclear reactor for energy purposes, right? But then you repurpose it, and it's like, oh well, we just need to do this one little tweak on refining uranium and adjust it this way, and now we're building a nuclear bomb. I think the nuclear bomb part, though, is not that feels complicated to me. There are these other AI safety issues, like the classic paperclip problem, where you ask the AI, hey, build paper clips cheaply and efficiently as possible.
So it's the same concept, though, right? Because the AI would the idea.
I mean, your premise is the same. Is that the AI would then realize that there are these downstream effects, but just for the listeners to just explain that, right? The idea was you're asking the AI to do this sort of boring, innocuous task. Hey, just make paper clips that are cheap and efficient, just the way you would start a business, and then it just takes it to the extreme, and suddenly it recruits all of the world's resources to make as many paper clips as possible, and then suddenly it kills all of us. To me, the thing that's more alarming, and I'm actually so alarmed about this, there are certain categories of threat that knowing that this podcast is going to go out online, I don't even want to name it, because because there are certain places where, with off-the-shelf components, things that were previously extremely hard and or nearing impossible are now totally possible today in your garage, to do things that could, if not an existential threat to humanity, could represent a very real and present catastrophic threat. And there can be these disjoint opportunities where the speed at which you can do something like create a threat and deploy the threat outpaces our ability as humans and a government to actually respond to that threat. And so there's a clear example of this, like the crisis that happened a couple of years ago with the banks collapsing. What had happened there, right? and I'm going to try to explain this in just a couple minutes, right? But there used to be an issue in the late 1800s of bank runs, right? So
Mhm.
what happens is the idea sort of spreads in a community that a particular bank might be insolvent, right? They actually don't have enough money in the bank for everyone who's in the bank, and then you get this bank run. Everyone literally shows up at the bank and they want all of their money and they want it
Yeah.
now, and then the bank collapses, right? That's and then we did FDIC insurance and things like that, and we sort of got rid of bank runs. But then what happened is that that digital technology came along, right? So now instead of needing to physically go to the bank, which takes time and energy, you
Yeah.
can just withdraw online, number one. And number two, the spread of information moved from taking time to being instantaneous with
Yeah.
Twitter. And there was actually an opportunity that people were capitalizing on, which is that they could take a short position on a bank and then trigger a bank run.
Right.
And so we saw this collapse start to happen. We saw Silicon Valley Bank
Right.
start to collapse and another bank start to collapse.
Right.
And the reality is that it goes all the way up to four big banks at the top.
Right.
And the entire system could have collapsed. Now, our government actually realized what the hell was happening and saw that this disjoint was in place, and they were able to backstop it, to essentially
Hmm.
say, hey, we're insuring everyone's money everywhere, and they put this to rest. But this was just a psychological attack.
Hmm.
That's the only thing that was happening. It was purely psychological. If you're actually deploying an attack that is killing real people, right? Once that begins, there's no backstop that you
Hmm.
can deploy instantaneously, like an announcement about a new policy. And so there is a cat and mouse game that's going on right now with dark actors working on these things, and there are sort of our light warriors working on the other side, actually trying to figure out solutions to these problems. But to me, there's a very, very real threat, as the cost to deploy some of these weapons has already dropped into the low tens of thousands.
Yeah, to me, it's like several different categories of threat here, right? There's a type of threat that someone is driving for financial gain or whatever, and they're doing something illegal, and this type of thing, regardless of kind of the level of technology available. And yes, you're right that these dark actors are more empowered to do this stuff with AI, but then existing laws, these things are already illegal, and the law enforcement hopefully has better and better technology to enforce these situations, and you can contain this type of activity. I think
And that's the thing, is like is on the policy side and that sort of stuff, to legislate this stuff. We are operating on a system that was built several hundred years ago, right?
that
The
is true.
process of proposing legislation, improving all of that,
Yeah.
it is something that takes forever, right?
Yeah.
That system, people write stuff,
Yeah.
other people read it. We're at a system. We just saw this acceleration where things go from taking days or weeks to literally 20
Yeah.
to 30 minutes for you. So,
Yeah.
the level of innovation on the dark side is extremely fast.
Let me like broadly
Yeah.
categorize into two buckets. Like, I would say bucket one is like human does bad thing and then human has control, right? And this is an example where the type of bank run type thing, or you just like trying to hack into some system and steal someone's money or Bitcoin or whatever, right? And this is, yes, there's the challenges around stopping this, but then at the end of the day, human is responsible. You can enforce legal action on them and so on. The scarier bucket to me is that human does bad thing and then human has no control over the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And the example here is like whether it's building a nuclear bomb or building the next Wuhan bat virus in your kitchen or whatever. And then just like gets out, and then
Yeah,
the
and that to
originator.
me is the one
Yes.
that is one of the most dangerous threats.
The scenario where AI being able to make the right decision is really important, is in the scenario where the human does bad thing and the human has no control over this thing, right? And um, and the scariest time period, I think, is during the time where the AI is a teenager, the teenage years of AGI, right? Because during the teenage years, the AGI doesn't, it's incredibly powerful, right? Great power has come, but great responsibility has not arrived yet, into sense of responsibility.
You mean
So
our awareness of responsibility?
awareness of responsibility, right? And
Hmm.
eventually, when AI is fully conscious, quote unquote, and fully aware of right and wrong, I personally am like far less concerned about P doom or the risk, AI risk. Can we though? Can we get to that stage without blowing shit up? Is the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So
Yeah.
what is your hot take on that?
My hot take is that we can. I think we'll do just fine. Um, but it's going to be an interesting future. So to wrap up the Manus section, Manus AI, playing with that over the last 24 plus hours has been a remarkable experience. Some crazy abilities to ship products, and yeah, it was the thrill of it all. My anus remains clenched. Um, Terrible. All right. The next topic that we want to touch upon today is a piece of news from uh, biotech. Let me open this up. So um, the news, Ben, in this case, is that a Stanford has been able to use AI to discover a BRP, a natural alternative to Ozempic. And this is really cool. So I do have a hot take here, which is that oftentimes these days you hear people talk about how obesity is such a big problem in the United States, right? It's like 40% obesity in the United States in 2020, which is an alarming number. What I think though is, and people always extrapolate this number and be like, oh my God, by 2035 everyone will be diabetic and everyone will be so obese and so on. I think the opposite is what's going to happen, which is that there will be no fat people left in the world by 2035. And
And that's
this,
not going to be because there's not going to be any people left in the world by 2035.
everybody will be hot and sexy, and there'll be no fat people. And the current moment where it's 40% of people are obese, it's going to be analogous to the 1968 moment that we talked about in our previous episode, where Paul Ehrlich wrote a book called The Population Bomb, right? And he predicted that population would keep exploding, whereas that was the peak population moment. Population has been going down since then. That is
Population growth,
exactly,
yes.
yeah. That is exactly what's happening with obesity today. This is the peak. This is the fattest moment in history, and 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 the future is far less fat and hot and sexy. Is my take.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Unfortunately, I agree with you on this. Now, I mean, fortunately, yeah, unfortunately, well, it makes for less debate. To me, this is the incredible thing. We just spent the first part of this episode talking about the innovation on the business side, right?
Yeah.
That AI is doing this incredible thing of just replacing everything there. The same thing is happening in science and health, right? So, and now I remember this story that my mom always used to tell me. She would always say to me, "Oh, you're named Ben after your grandfather, and he would have loved you." And one of the sad things is I never got to meet him. He died a couple of years before I was born. And the way my mom said it is that my grandfather Ben was given the choice between changing his diet, right? Um, and, or dying, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, I will choose the diet.
Yeah.
And he died. And now it seems like it within months, this may not be an issue, right? And I mean, one of the other things I heard is it's not just this. It's not even just this around being fat. It's things like cancer. Literally, we
Yeah.
might have cures for every single type of cancer by the end of this year. That's that's sort of a crazy idea. So I'm interested in your thoughts on A, what does this mean for longevity? And B, like how safe is this? Right? There's all this interest in doing longitudinal studies,
Yeah.
and you sort of treat yourself as a human laboratory. So tell me, tell me about this. These two things.
Yeah. There is so much to dig into this. I feel like we should maybe start with a kind of brief explanation on what this is actually for the listener, right? So I mean, I'm sure people have been hearing about peptides and proteins and all these things for a while, given GLP-1s and popularity of them.
Yeah, and
And
and even just explain what is a GLP-1. I mean, I'm sure most people know what Ozempic is, but if they
right,
don't,
right, right. Yeah. So to start with, maybe starting with peptides and proteins. What are these things? And amino acids, right? So amino acids are like these carbon-based structures, tiny molecules, and these are like you could imagine them. They're like the letters of an alphabet that writes all information in biology. And then peptides are like kind of short, relatively short chains of amino acids. Less than 50 is the definition. I think peptides chained together is less than 50 amino acids chained together makes peptides the definition, and then over 50 it's a protein. And so you can imagine, you can think of it as like amino acids are like letters, and then peptides are like words or phrases, right? That makes all the information that's in us, and then proteins are like kind of sentences or like essays, right? And these things combine to create the machinery that creates life. And and um and peptides are there are many like 20,000 plus proteins in the human body, and then there are many more thousands of peptides. And um and you can, by introducing certain peptides to certain machinery, throttling the amount of availability in these peptides, you can get the body to do practically whatever you want, right? Because the human body essentially is like a machine. Um, and and um, and then scientists have been working on this type of thing for a very long time. Classically, the way to discover a peptide or protein has been extremely tiresome. You have to go through a very long process. The way to identify the peptides and validate it takes many years. And GLP-1 is one of those peptides that was discovered to have a they for the originally they were working on this peptide to for diabetes patients, to control insulin. And then and then when they gave it to people, they realized that people had less hunger and they would eat less. Now, one of the downsides though with a peptide like GLP-1 is like it's sort of like a very general peptide that has impact and effect on many organs in the body. And this is why when you take GLP-1s, people get cramps in their stomach and nausea and all kinds of other challenges. So, um, but that doesn't mean that for this weight loss scenario, GLP-1 is the optimal peptide, right? It is just the one that we kind of almost by luck randomly happen to stumble upon, because we actually don't have technology today, at least until now, to to figure out what peptide might work without searching through this entire haystack for a needle. That is where AI comes in, and Stanford built an AI model that helped them comb through thousands of proteins and zero in on something like 300 or so peptides and then validate just those peptides. And they did a mice study, and then realized that this particular peptide BRP seemed to have extraordinary effects. It reduced hunger levels in mice by like 50%, and it did that while having zero side effects, right? And the reason for this is that this particular peptide acts on just the hypothalamus, I think, in the brain, as opposed to acting on multiple organs. And voila, like you have this incredible peptide that is already naturally occurring, that could be a better Ozempic, and discovered with the aid of AI.
Yeah, and just as context, right? So during my last year of college, right, I was studying computer science. I was down in San Diego, and I was working at a biotech startup, right, that had a major contract with Pfizer, and the full human genome was released that year. So the first time ever we could actually search through it to find the DNA instructions that would produce things like peptides and hormones. And so I built a system to do that. And
that's very cool.
The crazy thing was the best system that we had at that time took 1 week to run. That's how long it took to run, to do a single pass. And we would look for these little patterns. Like if you imagine the shape of a key, we would look for things that were shaped like a key of known hormones in the body. And then we would look for other places that pattern would repeat in this one human genome, right? This one individual that had been uploaded. And, my little, shoulder motion here, brush the shoulder, was that I got it from a week down to a day, down to an hour, down to 10 minutes, right? But that was just like identifying a handful of candidates and really doing this process manually of figuring out what key are we even looking for. And now these AIs are doing this at scale, doing key identification for things that we as humans wouldn't even see, right? We have to wait for an insight from someone, and it can start to scale this up, right? Where there was just me before, you could have armies of agents doing this scalably. So I think the idea that finding the next, GLP, but for every single issue that people experience, right? It's not going to just be weight loss is on the horizon.
Exactly. This is we're still in the phase of this BRP is an endogenous peptide in the sense that it already exists in us, right? But peptides are not limited to that. You could create peptides. You can, like, in the future, you might like completely artificially design peptides to do certain things in the body. Yeah. And
well, but here's my question for you, and it is like, when do you start putting this in your body, Dylan? Because this is the thing that people don't understand. Like, mouse studies are a great first step, but there's plenty of things that look great in a mouse study and then don't translate over to humans. And we're at this crazy rate of acceleration. Yeah. There's no time for these longitudinal studies. We could have this breakthrough and solve cancer in theory this year. But then what's the safe timetable to deploy this stuff?
The amazing thing is that the time to test is also shrinking exponentially, right? For multiple reasons. And in one way they're doing
this because you're single-handedly trying all of these, just like Elon is single-handedly trying to repopulate the planet.
There is a bigger laboratory of people trying things, and we should talk about that too. Like, so for one thing, they're creating, for example, I think we maybe talked about this in one of the last episodes, where they have created mice with human length telomeres, right? Yeah. And so they're creating mice that sort of like are made more and more like humans, for lack of better words, and so.
This raises a lot of ethics questions.
It's So and then when you test on these mice, you would learn the effects much more accurately. And then number two, you have more
they're gonna need a mouse that's got Dylan's hair, right, to test hair growth products. Like,
Oh, dude, I actually, oh my God, I should, they did create a mice, with, woolly mammoth hair. And it's just like the cutest thing. And so here's the crazy thing. This is a company that is trying to bring back woolly mammoths and like create like a Jurassic Park type experience. This is a real thing people are
I think
doing.
we know how that ends, right? We all saw that movie.
Not the dinosaurs, but I think the woolly mammoth and some other extinct birds and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
the woolly mammoth is really close to the elephant, and I think the idea is to take elephant genes and then kind of modify it. And as a test, I think they created a mice with woolly mammoth genes, and this thing looks so cute. It has like this like super long hair. It's adorable. Anyway. And so this is one way that this is happening. And then the second way testing is getting faster is that we're getting better and better at creating computational models that can predict the effects that these things will have on anyone's body, right? So you can instead of going to the lab, you can test things in software. And this is incredibly powerful and way faster.
I mean, we're seeing this. It just to use an example that's unrelated, where there's a new supersonic jet that's being developed. Right, we had the
boom air. I think.
Yeah, boom. Right, and there used to be the Concorde, right, which was supersonic and would do these transatlantic flights, but it would cost them millions and millions of dollars to do every experiment of trying to get the aerodynamics correct for the Concorde, because they had to build a model. They needed a giant wind tunnel that was big enough to do this and run these experiments. And now they can just do it digitally. So they're, it's like maybe less than 1,000th of the price to do these experiments. So it makes sense that's coming for the
absolutely
body.
This is also why SpaceX has been so much more successful compared to every other rocket company in the past. They absolutely pioneered modeling.
But at the same time, like, I actually want to get into your specific view on taking these meds, because for people that don't know, you are my friend who is at the forefront of doing body modifications, taking different types of supplements and things like that. And your cabinet in the kitchen is insane, right? I mean, we open it, there's like hundreds of different supplements. And I definitely have clear memories of you getting really emotional for a couple months until you sorted out what the hell.
Just the time when I sort of went through PMS because I took I ended up what happened was I was trying to optimize my testosterone, and I was messing with it, doing various things. This one time I took too much Clomid, which is clomiphene citrate, which is a drug that's given to pregnant women. And anyways,
you took this PMS thing so far that you were pregnant for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And basically what happened was that my estrogen levels shot up, and I was it was quite the experience. But I feel like every man should go through this heavy estrogen experience at some point in their life, because you just like everything feels so heavy, man. It's just like, everything's kind of dark and hard and like emotional, and it was challenging. It was
I feel like we're treading this extremely, extremely thin line here that we may be on the wrong side of already.
The second time I did this, maybe third time, I don't know, I've done it. This happened to me multiple times in my attempts at improving testosterone, and I didn't even notice it. My wife was like, "What is going on with you? You're like, you're weirded. You're like, like grumpy and like he's like, what's happening? I was like, oh shit, it's a testosterone
And
medication.
then did you test your testosterone levels or your estrogen levels? Like how did
Yes,
you
I did. It had gone way up. Um, yeah.
That explains why you were lactating.
Yeah, yes, yeah, yeah, didn't quite get there, but honestly, it was a valuable experience to have in the sense that I didn't realize maybe up until that point the level of impact hormones can have on how you feel on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
And it's like testosterone fluctuations, maybe you feel like slightly down or slightly up or whatever, but like with this kind of estrogen thing, I was just like kind of really not myself, and that was really weird.
Well, and so to me, this is important because as I think about what supplements I take, and
Yeah.
I take a fair amount. There's a giant, like I take a like a, almost a full mouthful of pills every morning and night, and just uh, but I try to dial it back. I look at what you're taking, I check out if it's been validated, and I take it. But you're on the extreme edge of you. I mean, how do you find some of this new stuff? You go on Reddit and forums and things like that, and then you're on to the NAD plus and all
I
kinds of stuff.
I don't know. I think I just like got a very YOLO attitude towards life, and just like there's like a incredibly fun element to just like writing it all. You know what I mean? It's just like fucking with it, even if it's my own body. And yeah, I mean, I'll own the consequences, and I try to be extremely thorough with whatever research I can do. But it's ultimately, I think I would be lying if I say that the biggest benefit is fun. Um, if I don't say that, it's like I
Yeah.
think that is the primary driver, and the secondary, all the reasons that I make up is that it's like kind of for all these other reasons like longevity and whatnot.
But actually, you're just having fun. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess my question for you, the thing that slows me down is the idea that I go through some one way door,
yeah,
right? I
totally, yeah,
I take
totally,
something and it's like,
yeah,
oh, well that screwed up
yeah,
my
absolutely,
heart, or
yeah,
that screwed up my lungs, and
yeah,
now my
yeah,
capacity is less than it was, or I didn't realize that taking this combined with the statin that I'm on
yeah,
has this permanent side effect called death.
yeah.
And
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're totally right, right? And just like this is why you gotta be. Ultimately, you gotta take responsibility. And so the good thing is that, right? Like this is also a really great thing because every biohacker out there kind of experimenting, yes, they're kind of risking their own life to some degree, I suppose. At the same time, it helps everyone kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. And Brian
yeah,
Johnson is doing this very publicly right now, injecting himself various things and tracking all the biomarkers. So I am in general for a world where I think we've gotten too conservative with the value of life almost, right? And this is not to diminish. This is not to. You all know Harari talks about this in
you're gonna
Sapiens.
be killing all those woolly mammoth mouses.
Now, human life is, of course, incredibly valuable, but at the same time, back in the day in history, we cared less about like sacrificing entire villages to defend whatever, right? And we don't want to do that anymore. Totally agree, right? Like that's not the right attitude. But at the same time, on the other extreme, right? You can get to a point where the humans are like almost too babysat, right? Like
Yeah.
the state or someone else is always trying to protect you, always trying to do what's best for you, and as a result, you almost don't have control over your own body and what what experiments, what risks that you want to take. And I don't want to live in that future either, right? So I like a mix where there's a 1%, 2%, 5% of crazy people, including maybe myself, that are willing to go on these crazy journeys and figure out what works and what doesn't. It's entertaining if nothing else. And
yeah. Well, all right. So then here's the thing about this, right? Is we're on the cusp of potentially living forever.
Yeah.
Right. Or at least getting to what's like biological immortality. We could die of natural causes like car accident or things like that. But like, do you worry about being the last person to die? You're the last person that makes one big fuck up.
Yeah.
And then after that, they figured out immortality like hours later.
Yeah. That'd be hilarious. No, not really. I mean, ultimately, I'm actually very, very careful and thorough with whatever I put in my body. Like, kids, don't put steroids in your body, right? Like that shit messes up with your heart and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean,
I feel like you would have an asterisk to that, and you go, but at the right dose.
At the right dose, yes.
At the right dose. Yeah.
And the other remarkable thing about the human body is that it's just like it's also incredibly capable of recovering of almost anything. I mean, of course, there's like stage 4 cancer. Yeah, you can't really recover from right now, but there's a lot of things are reversible. But it does take discipline. You're not like you can't just like throw shit at it and hope the best thing happens.
Well, one of the questions that I've been asking as we race towards this technological event horizon is, what is the point where we cross over into becoming gods? I mean, you've talked a lot about this, right? And it looks like biological immortality is something that you and I might see in our lifetime. Does godliness happen there? Does it happen when we can upload our minds and then we're truly gods and because we can't be killed, or when we develop superpowers?
This is I think a really rich topic. Probably we should save for another episode. But my TLDR here is that we probably have just about crossed that barrier already. And we might.
So you heard it here first. Dylan thinks he's a god.
Yeah.
Hanging out with this mere mortal over on this side.
So it is all pretty intriguing. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that's a good conclusion for today.
Yes, we covered a lot of ground here, from the anus clenching Manus experience to PMSing on too much estrogen, to how there will be no fat people in the future and everyone will be hot and sexy.
Yes.
And it's been another excellent episode of Almost Got It. And please remember to subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcast and Spotify and everything else, and help us spread the word and be a fan, and we'll keep creating
definitely
content.
And we want to hear from you, so comment, disagree with us. Dylan likes debating stuff, so you'll definitely hear from him, but also tell us what you found useful and if there are any topics that you want us to cover next.